Welcome to the Dumb Idea Podcast Show with Mike and Alex. We thank you for joining us as we have a couple of beers and a cigar and talk about what's going on in our lives. Grab an adult beverage and a smoke and settle in with us. Please like, subscribe, and comment on each show so we can hear whether you agree or disagree with our take on things. Listen wherever your favorite podcasts are and at www.dumbideapodcast.com. All right, welcome back. We were 2 weeks ago. Mike and I were talking about concerns about with Anne Arundel County. I think we talked about the traffic. We talked about some additional developments that were going on. We talked about some rezoning issues. We talked about the parks and recs and how Anne Arundel County doesn't seem to be keeping up with other counties surrounding us, or maybe we're not getting what we're paying for. And from that episode, we were fortunate enough to have Councilwoman, Anne Arundel Councilwoman, Amanda Fiedler. She agreed to come out and talk to us, and we do know her on a personal level as well, so that probably helped out. Not coming on with strangers, that's kind of nice. So Councilwoman Amanda Fiedler is here. We're just going to talk about some other things in the county. We'll touch on some of the issues we talked about before. And this is not going to be NBC News night here. We're not going for the hard kill. So this is just going to be some friends talking. And who knows, maybe we'll find out some more information, because Mike and I sure didn't know too many details. We just had a lot of
opinions.
Yeah, what's
like
going
most
on?
People don't know a whole lot, but have a mouth and opinions. So
Mike and I were we were Facebook. We were the Facebook commenters at the time. Where's that noise?
Yeah,
and some other things. But welcome, Amanda.
Thank you for having me.
I got so many questions for you, so I wonder which one we should dive into first. But you had talked about the traffic on 50.
Yes.
And you talked about how there's that study that's being done by the state, right?
Correct. And
they're looking for either new places for a span across the Chesapeake Bay Bridge or adding to what was already there. Do you have any inkling as far as where they might decide, or have they decided where they're going to put this thing?
So the preliminary decision was to go in the same exact location as the current two spans. The NEPA study, which is required by the federal government for any major infrastructure project, is in its draft phase. And in that draft phase, the study has a needs and purpose statement. And the needs and purpose statement is extremely narrow, focusing on getting people over the bridge. It doesn't really focus on getting people approaching the bridge on either side moving. So I think it's flawed. It doesn't really focus on what the impacts of the Bay Bridge traffic are on local communities. They need to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, because Mike and I were kind of talking, and we were saying in the last episode, there might be traffic studies that are done in this area, and if they don't do them on Thursdays and Fridays during beach traffic months, they're not getting the full picture of it. So, whereas the county or the state might say, "Oh no, these roads are fine for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday traffic," they might not be seeing the full picture as to the impact that any backup or incident on 50, what it does to the side roads. And we're talking on both sides of 50.
Correct.
So like over on Whitehall Road or down toward the Annapolis end, or even in the Arundel end, where, anyone who lives here will almost say, well, we feel hostage to the traffic, because we know on Thursdays and Fridays, try and leave work early to get home at a reasonable hour, not even on time. And then 2, just avoid it altogether. Just
right.
Don't leave your house. Prisoner in your own home.
It's like people that live around FedEx Field on game day. Like, they know not to go places on Sunday when the Reds or the Washington football team is at home.
Right.
And we kind of, the same thing falls in here. Like, one incident kind of cascades, and you can almost see it. Like, that one little thing happens, and then boom, it's just cascading down the system. Route 2's backed up. Right. It's all just backed up. And I thought it was neat, the second span, or the additional span, because there was rumors of it being down in Calvert County, going across that side of and like ending somewhere near, I guess, Cambridge is directly across the bridge there. Also, and another one adding a span to the current location.
Yep.
How long does all that take? Like, will we be alive to see any of it?
We will be alive. We'll probably be in retirement homes. That has been the ongoing joke from elected officials who are more mature than myself. I will say that they're not going to be alive when the span is built. So the reality is, when we look at those studies, you get into this pointing, well, that's not my road, that's your road. That's not my road, that's your road. So when the state looks at the Bay Bridge, they're looking at Route 50. They're not really looking at the local jurisdiction corridors that are approaching.
Right.
They say that's your problem. Well, our problem starts with your problem.
Right.
So you get into this pointing fingers cycle that, it becomes a bit bureaucratic.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like, I know there was talk about maybe putting a span over by Middle River, but I feel like if you put a span up by Middle River, people that are up that far north anyway are just going to go up and around. So they're not really coming down so much. I feel like it's a lot of the traffic from D.C. and Virginia. And, of course, you get the commuting traffic from Delaware anyway, from people that live in Delaware and work in D.C. But on a normal Monday through Wednesday, that Delaware traffic really isn't impacting it too much. It can flow pretty smoothly. It's a lot of that D.C., Virginia, maybe even West Virginia traffic a little bit that's heading over the bridge, or people that don't know any better coming up 95 from those areas. I feel like, though, if you put it in Calvert County, there's just not enough traffic from 301 to Route 4 to kind of bump over.
That would be
So is any of this really going to impact us? I feel like, and this is going to be really, really... A lot of people are going to be pissed off in this area if I say this. I feel like the best option is to put a Delaware Memorial style bridge where it's 4 lanes on each side going over. Because right now you've got 3 and 2.
Correct.
And almost if you had 3 and 3, you could almost alleviate it. It was almost like when we were talking about the Severn Bridge. Everyone complained about the idea of narrowing the lanes and adding that 4th lane going over the Severn Bridge eastbound. And they're, it'll never work. The lanes are going to be too small. There's going to be too many accidents. And lo and behold, it worked.
Yeah, actually. And now the backup just starts at the Bay Bridge rather than...
Right.
But hey, it used to be the Severn River Bridge.
That's true.
And as soon as you crossed over that hump, you knew it. It was like off to the races again. And now it seems to be the Bay Bridge. And then it was really bad last year when they had to shut that lane down on the one span.
Right.
And I think Friday, the other day, what really kind of messed it up was you had a couple accidents, and then it was also raining, so they couldn't go to two-way traffic on the other span. So at that point, now you're losing a lane. You have an accident. All the traffic has to go down into 2 lanes from the existing 4 on 50. It was just a comedy of errors, if you will. So
absolutely. I think to your point, though, I think in a perfect scenario, no weather, no traffic, no police activity, that would be a potential solution for the current traffic volume.
Yep.
But when you're talking about the projected increase in traffic, although there's some disagreements over that projection, and then you're talking about the only way for the tri-state area to get, the easiest way for the tri-state area to get to the Eastern Shore, one incident can shut down both sides for hours.
Yeah, I'm not too, and again, this is not going to be a popular opinion, I'm not too worried about the days when there's just an accident. Those things happen. I mean, I remember one time, it was a few years ago, and I was coming home from D.C. at the time, and I believe it took me about 3.5 hours to get home. Like, it was a major accident, I get it. But it was one time in like 10 years. Right. I'm not so worried about when the accidents happen. Those are going to happen. It doesn't matter what bridge is going over there. And if an accident is shutting down the bridge, it's shutting down the bridge. It happens. Unfortunately for us in this area, though, it's not just accidents. It is congestion. And it's like Mike said, if it's raining, you're down to 2 lanes. You don't get that 3rd lane on the westbound span. So that's why I do feel like, and I don't know how you'd implement this without taking out the other 2 bridges and basically saying there's no crossing at all unless you go all the way up and come down.
Right.
Because there's no space in the middle of the 2 bridges to put an ultra wide bridge. Can't do it.
Correct.
So the only other option is, are you going to can you add on to the bridges that are there? I don't think you can. Or is there any way to build a 3-lane span going eastbound in between the two, and then eventually take out the two-lane span? So essentially what you'd end up with is you'd have the westbound span that as it currently is with the 3 lanes.
Right.
But then you'd have an eastbound span with 3 lanes. And they could probably put that up without having to take down the 2-lane span immediately. You could leave it up and leave it functional.
Right.
But I don't even know if they've even looked into that part.
I don't think that they've gotten to the design plan yet. Mm-hmm. When you look at the details of the study, it's really, the environmental, and they're not drawing pictures of.
Sure. I'm very familiar with the NEPA and environmental historical preservation stuff.
Yep.
I'm very familiar with that. It can take quite a long time. I understand that. However, at some point, the state needs to rip the Band-Aid, get a plan, move forward with it. I mean, you could conceivably have a new bridge within 6 years. It would take probably 2 years just for the environmental study, and then probably another. I would say you could probably put up a bridge in under 3 years. So conceivably, if someone's got to have a governor or whoever has just got to say, all right, I'm going to take this fall. I'm going to take this one on the chin, but there will be a new bridge when I'm done, and people will love me after I'm out of office. Because whoever fixes this is going to be a hero in this, at least in our little portion of the state.
Yeah, right. It's one of those things I think even people in, say, Western Maryland are going to appreciate, because they all use, if you were to run the tags as they're going over the bridge, you'd see them from all over the state, Virginia, D.C., West Virginia, Pennsylvania. Yep. It would definitely be a popular thing. It's really it's not just a regional thing as far as this region or a DMV thing. It's really a mid-Atlantic region issue, because you definitely have people traveling from, anywhere within 4 hours of the bridge to get to Ocean City. I'm not an Ocean City guy. I don't go there.
Oh, shame.
Me either. I don't go either.
Who are you two?
I don't go.
I was born in Philadelphia. My parents were Jersey Shore people, and then we got priced out of that. So there's no Jersey Shore feel at Ocean City, so we'd go to the Outer Banks. That's just where we go now. But I do go. Living so close to it, though, it does affect me, and then it affects people who live on the Eastern Shore side. They have to drive through it. I worked with a dude that he would leave early. He'd burn leave every Friday to just not have to sit in that traffic.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's also be like development on the Eastern Shore as well, because the more housing they build over on Kent Island and beyond, you're going to have more people that are just regular commuters.
Correct.
Now, I look at it as I live here, so I should have special rights and privileges. No one else seems to share that opinion.
It's my world. Everyone bow down to me.
But it does stink when you're, when every person out there sees Waze tells them to get off at Baydale and go down College Parkway.
Right.
And I'm just trying to get my hair cut at Cape, and then it's I can't do that now because all these people are trying to get to and you see it Virginia, DC, Pennsylvania, like you're not local.
Correct.
And the other, is it really saving them any time? What's it saving them? 15 minutes? Because you're still going to, even if you get all the way up to the bridge, you're still going to sit there. And it's not like the bridge, that traffic's never really at a standstill most of the time.
Correct.
You're moving a little bit. So by the time you get off, come down the side road, creep along on the side road because that's packed too.
Right.
Come back out to where the bridge is. Like most of them go like down to Sandy Point, or they'll cut across to Whitehall or whatever.
Yep.
You say, I'll give you maybe 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah. Now,
and you've made everyone's life along College Parkway and Whitehall Road miserable for 2 days. Thank you. Get off my roads.
But now on the Kent Island side, they do have signs that say Swifty, or what is it, 50 Swiftest or something like that.
Yeah.
To encourage people to stay on, because people try to do the same thing on Route 8 on the different side roads, and maybe that's something we can consider just as a thing to say, hey, stay on 50. Like, maybe some people will listen.
Well, don't the county cops over there, don't they block off some of the exits? Is it county or state or MTA or someone?
It might be transportation.
Like I heard sometimes
on the Eastern Shore.
Yeah, sometimes they're blocking stuff off, or they're looking for tags.
They may be. So in Anne Arundel County, a few years ago, there was a local community organization worked with the county and the state to try to turn vehicles around, but also put signs up. And they were slapped on the hand by the Federal Transit Administration that said it is illegal to do that. You cannot restrict taxpayers from driving on tax-funded roads.
That's a common refrain on the Facebook community pages. I pay taxes. I can drive on any public road. Yeah, you can. But as we said in another episode, just because you can do something doesn't make you not a jerk.
Right.
You're still a big old jerk, and we don't like you. And I'm not advocating this, but maybe, as you're driving down the road, maybe some teenagers in the area can shoot some paintballs. I'm just saying, if you have an out-of-state plate and the kid decides to tag you with a couple airsoft pellets with the yellow paint in there.
Well, I will tell you, I was stuck in that traffic too. Had a night full of commitments. Decided to run our dog over to the vet for its booster shot, and I don't know what came over me that I didn't look at the traffic on the Google Maps that I have. So I'm stuck in traffic with a puppy who needs to go to the bathroom. And I'm thinking, gosh, what is going to happen on social media if somebody gets a picture of their councilwoman in a median with a dog trying to go to the bathroom?
And you want to know what you do? They got your picture. They put it up there saying, my dog had to pee. Sorry.
I'm stuck just like you.
Yeah. Stay off the roads. Everybody else, I love the locals. Yeah. Stay off the roads. Gotta get. You know what? It's going to be the next evolution of politician.
Right.
Just getting real with people. Be like, you know what? Shouldn't have been doing it. Get off my roads. Sorry.
My dog's got to go.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, it's either the dog or the car.
Right.
The grass or the car.
If we can all agree on one thing.
10 out of 10 of us, that dog's out there peeing. Yes. The dog is not peeing in the car. Not one of us would do that. So let them have their virtue signaling moment, if you will.
I'll note that for the future.
Right. Well, all right. Enough about the state road hampering us locals. Let's talk about local zoning.
Oh, this is fun.
And local development, because it's a little bit tied together.
Yep.
Now, I'm gonna mention something that's a recent development that could be happening, but it's been happening for a while. And it happened over on Jones Station Road with that neighborhood of townhomes that went in.
Yes.
It was behind the Hidden Leaf, Bright Leaf community, kind of like tucked back there. There was the one off of Bell Reeve.
Yes.
That was kind of over by the office building. The Hovnanian Four Seasons.
Yes.
Which my mother currently lives in. I want to say I'm not mad at people who buy them. Because if it's built and people buy them, that's what they're there for. I'm mad at, and I shouldn't say I'm mad at the developers because, they're going to ask, and if someone doesn't say no, they're going to build. I get that.
Right.
But there's one off of Freshfield Lane over by the Providence Center. Now, there's already one that was built called the Enclave.
Correct. Okay.
I believe that same builder bought up 3 different plots of land. Is essentially combining them into one to create a new 55 and older multi-use residential area. I believe it's going to add about 28 either townhomes or I think they're single family homes, 55 and older. So
correct.
They get around the issue of Broadneck Elementary School being closed off because it's a closed school because they don't have any more capacity.
Correct.
That is one way for a community to say we can't allow building because of that, because we don't have any more room in the schools. But the developers get around it by saying, okay, well, it's going to be 55 and older, so it won't add any more kids, so it won't impact that.
Right.
At each of these developments, and I know this happens in Severna Park, it probably happens in parts of Pasadena, there are vocal opponents to these things.
Yes.
And they go to the meetings. And I know me personally, when they were trying to do something, rezoning those 3 parcels on Freshfield, I believe they were R1, R1, R1. Mm-hmm. And they got approval to go R5, I think. Is that what it was? R5, or maybe they clumped them all together. They did something. There was a rezoning of it somehow to allow them to put more than one house on each plot of land. At most, there should have been 3 houses on those 3 plots. That's it. Somewhere along the line, zoning and planning approved a rezoning of that to allow them to do what they're doing, and they did it with that plot of land on Jones Station, and I believe they did it with some others. And I guess my question is this: as a citizen, none of us can have any complaints when someone builds a single house on an R1 plot of land. I get that. It's what it's zoned for. Go ahead and do it. But when some developers come in, people with some deep pockets, and who knows who they're putting money into, what kitty they're putting money into. I believe Koch, when they built some homes, they gave some money to the county so they could add 9 schoolrooms to the high school to get around that school being full in order to build their homes. So obviously the county does take money from somewhere to get around this. So I guess my concern is this. There is a lot of vocal opposition to this Freshfields new community.
There is.
There's been vocal opposition to other communities that have been built in the last 5 to 10 years. At what point does zoning and planning tell these developers no? Obviously, there's enough citizens here who don't want this, and maybe we need to listen to them.
Right.
So at what point will that start to happen? What has to happen in order to get development to stop in these areas?
So,
especially when the infrastructure can't handle it.
Right. So that's a great question. It's a question I get all the time. So the way that Office of Planning and Zoning makes decisions is any proposed development, commercial, industrial, residential, or otherwise, they have to go through an adequate public facilities study, and that's our water, our connection to fire hydrants for fire safety. That's our roads. You have to go through a traffic study. If you're more than, I believe, 8, anything under 8 is a minor subdivision. And you have to have school capacity. Those are the 3 metrics. If you meet those metrics legally, the county cannot shut it down because it becomes, according to those in the legal field, taking of land. So that particular property, it's funny, I've been so familiar with that piece of land. I know the family from living here my entire life. I don't know when it was R1. I know as long as I've been in my position and for the past few years, it's been R5. But what has changed is the definition of land use, which created some confusion during the recent general development plan, which is a whole other bag of worms. But that's the short answer. Legally, the Office of Planning and Zoning can't say no. What they can do is say, if you remember from when we were looking at the plans, no, you can't have this many houses because you're requesting so many modifications to have that many houses.
What about things like road width? I know with the Enclave, they made an exception to allow them to have a narrower road and still put the houses on. And I believe they're doing the same thing with this community as well. At what point, at what point do they stop making exceptions and just say, look, this is what it is? I mean, and even in the instance with the new development,
right?
They're combining 3 different plots of land to try to. It's going to be one community,
correct?
On 3 different plots of land. Why are they allowed to essentially combine these 3 plots and make one community? It's kind of it's a little weird, I think, that they're allowing that. Where it should, I guess, if it was R5, shouldn't it be 3 different communities that go in? Because 3 different plots of land zone R5, if it is zone R5, which I'm sure you're right.
Right. So I think it comes down to the transaction of sale and how the current owner sells it to the real estate agent or developer. I don't know who's at the table.
Yeah.
And they'll probably, because it is all one family, they'll probably do some kind of merger of parcels.
Okay.
Those are the nuanced details that don't come before the county council.
Right. Oh, and that's what. So, just so most people know, this is not something the council does at all.
Correct.
It's done only in zoning and planning. The issue is, though, none of us elect anyone in zoning and planning. Am I right?
That is correct.
They're just career people in there making these decisions. And look, I get it. Lawyers are probably dictating what they can say yes and no to. But it would, I guess, from the local citizens' mindset, it would be nice if the county said, no, and said, look, especially the roads just can't handle it. I mean, and this comes down to when they're doing traffic studies, they're probably not looking at Thursdays and Fridays because this is only going to add to the Thursday and Friday issue. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we have no problems. Right. Thursday, Friday during beach weeks, we're screwed.
Can we sell the communities that you can only reside here Monday through Thursday?
Right. Yeah. Where are those?
And what then happens? Like, because I know we touched on this in our previous local episode. So like when Levitt built Levittown in New York, Levittown outside of Philadelphia, when they built Bowie, Levitt went and built schools, roads, fire stations. Is there any provision that, like, hey, yeah, you could build? And the thing is, like, we all live here. We live here because it's a nice place. Yep. For the most part. That's why I chose to move here, because we loved the area. It was nice and a good place to raise a family. So I appreciate the fact that other people want to do the same thing. Right. But we don't want to do it to the point where next thing you know, we look like Silver Spring or Wheaton or Fairfax or these places where you just cannot get anywhere at any point because the roadways just can't accommodate all the traffic. Is there a way that we can say, hey, yeah, you could build this, but you have to make improvements to the affected roadways? Hey, the 55 and older, we touched on this before in the previous episode, 55 and older, the fire station is going to have, with that demographic, more ambulance calls. Right. Is like, who pays for that? Is it, or is there a way to say, yeah, you can do that, but, hey, these are the affected infrastructure and public services. There should be more calls for police, this and that. You have, the developer would then have to try to help with that. Is there any provision for that, like they did back in the 50s? Or
yes, there are. They probably need to be updated. There are impact fees that developers have to pay. They go to impact fee districts, though, that don't align with the district that they're built in. So there's been a lot of chatter about fixing that. There was a bill introduced in 2019, but it ended up getting pulled. But yes, they are required. If they fail a traffic study, they have to bring the impacted roads up to a passing score, which, if you know, a passing score is a D. So.
I would have done gret in that class.
C's get degrees. Kids out there, please don't listen to
Apparently
me.
D's get roads.
like Mike said in a previous podcast, this is called the Dumb Idea Podcast. Don't listen to us on life advice. That's not what we're here for. What about and a two-part question. What about before more building happens? What about increasing capacity on College Parkway? Because from Route 2 all the way past the community college, it's 2 lanes on either side. You got a 4-lane road. Yep. Is there any way to continue that all the way down to Cape St. Clair, or is there just not the width?
The right of way. Yes.
Was it right of way or width? I mean, because they're putting in the trail. The county's obviously doing that. They could go closer to the trail, only a little bit, right, and put in the extra lanes to do this, especially down that way, up closer to like Shore Acres. Is it more a right-of-way thing, or is it the space that there's just not enough space in order to widen it?
So it's interesting you ask that question. There is a heated debate, you may not even know it, on the peninsula among residents on this very topic. And the reason being is there are still in long-term plans for College Parkway with, that resides in the traffic department to expand, to be 2 lanes from one end to the other. But it has gotten pushback from community members who believe that it will encourage traffic and not alleviate traffic. But now we're in a little bit of a...
We're laughing because it's already here. You can't encourage what's already happening.
That's a legit argument that will encourage traffic. That's almost as ridiculous as if we build more jails, that's going to encourage crime. Like, that doesn't make any sense at all. But I digress. I'm sorry.
You remember what we talked about? We should have the person.
Yes.
There should be the one designated person that goes to these meetings, the county council meetings or wherever these planning meetings are, just to stand up and tell these other people with horrible ideas to get up and like, no, don't, none of you listen to this guy.
So I have
Yeah.
the job of listening to both sides and then trying to figure out which direction is the best to go. But now we have the challenge of a good portion of the right of way on the south side, or I'm sorry, the north side of College Parkway has the bike trail.
Right.
So I don't know if that will ever come to fruition. One idea that was also thrown out there that got heated debate was creating a gate system, a center lane like Mountain Road has.
Oh, because that helped. If anyone has been down Mountain Road in Pasadena, it might have helped a little bit, but I can't imagine the people down there would. I'm sure they would have rather just had 2 lanes on each side and been done with it. But
I mean, if we can start to figure out how to use the zipper merge, that might help.
Yep. He was just telling me about that. He's like, he goes, I like to merge late. I say, because that's the way it's supposed to work. Zipper merges work, people. 2 lanes until the zipper merge, and then you go one. You basically alternate back and forth of who gets to go. Okay, everyone will get home quicker if you just do it. Instead, everyone lines up in that right-hand lane all the way back to halfway past the college. No, use both lanes. That's what it's there for.
I actually reached out to our traffic department and asked if they could put a zipper sign, and they said apparently that one, it doesn't exist within county standards as far as being able to use. They were going to consider putting one of the scrolling signs to explain what zippering is, because it seems so foreign to drivers.
Couldn't they just put up a yellow sign that shows the zipper? Isn't there like a common yellow traffic sign that shows zipper merge? Like, and everyone knows what that means?
I've seen alternate merge. Sometimes that's what they call it.
Sure.
But, yeah, no one around here. It's like a foreign thing. Then you have the guy that likes to straddle the lane.
Oh, I'm trying to block that.
People.
Get out.
Yes.
That dude needs to, you know what?
Yeah.
Go on the shoulder and park your car for a bit. Hothead. People are going to use, they're literally using their cars like 5,000-pound missiles.
Yes.
Like, I'm going to use this and block people because they're trying to get ahead of me. No, they're trying to use the road the way it's intended for use. Let them by.
But it would be a shame if you know, that bike trail is too close and they widen the road, because I like that bike trail.
Me too.
In fact, I'd love it to go to be completed on the other side and make it to, because like now I can ride to Cape St. Clair and go to Rita's and get fatter. Like, I should have just stayed home.
Listen, you see me smiling. You want to know why? Because
you just drive to Rita's.
Well, that too. But someone already mentioned when that bike path was being put in. Of course, the naysayers were out on that too. Even like, no one will use it. A lot of people use it. Well, if you put it there, what happens when a car swerves off the road and jumps up and lands on someone? That was an actual comment on Facebook. That was a concern.
I didn't see that one.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm sure a lot of people missed that. No, the person was worried that this car, being that far away from was going to Dukes a hazard flip it and land. Like, she didn't even say run into it. She said land on them. So she meant the car was going to go up in the air, flip on its roof, and just land on somebody. That was their actual concern.
They're like Daytona.
Those are the people that we don't need speaking.
I don't think I've ever seen traffic move fast enough on College Parkway.
I mean, it'll go fast.
Even if it's
not that fast.
Even if it's going 50, or let's say, someone's speeding and going 60. All of the magical things that would have to come together in order for someone to get air with their 6,000-pound car,
right?
Flip it, and then have enough speed and momentum to make it all the way to that bike trail and land on somebody would be amazing.
Turn the TV off.
Well, typically when there are typically audio cues when an accident is starting on its trajectory for where it's going to end up. And it's funny, along that shoulder, there's actually berms and crafty names for engineering and such that I don't understand, but there are unnoticed ways to slow down anything should it be coming on or trying to go off the bike trail.
I'm going to go ahead and say that even if there's an accident or some kind of incident, I'm gonna say with almost 100%. Actually, I'm gonna say 100% certainty. I'm never 100% certain of anything. No one is going to flip and land on somebody on that thing. Just this is not happening.
Anomaly. I think the only thing that you stand a higher chance of having a piece of an airplane go to BWI, fall off, and hit you on the trail than you would of a car flipping over and going airborne and landing. It's just craziness.
We have more of a shot of a plane crash landing into our houses because we're somewhat in a flight path,
which I love, by the way. I love it.
I don't mind it. I like it.
I love it.
That noise.
Flight path?
I love
that
it.
noise is soothing.
I love
to
airplanes. So
You might be the only one.
in fact, I'd be the guy that would go to the public comment and be like, "No, push him in lower. I want him lower. I want to be able to see the rivets."
I don't want them down that because I don't like them when they shake the house type of thing.
Cool.
Like I don't want them doing Blue Angel stuff by my house. But
Even better.
But the first time, like when I moved here, like 20-something years ago, I was working from home one day, and one of the Blue Angels buzzed my house. It scared the crap out of me.
Yeah, it will.
Sound of freedom.
It was. Look, listen. Look, I was proud that it was. I was proud it was happening. I was. But if you're new here and you're not expecting it on that day at that time, the noise will.
Oh yeah.
Bodily functions might happen and it might not be pretty. But I'd say with the jet engines though, like the big jumbo jets and whatnot, I don't know what it is about the noise. It's very soothing to me.
Well, and generally when they're coming low here, they're landing.
Yeah.
So they're not running. Now I get it if you live on the departure end. By the time if they have the run, if they're departing heading south at BWI, they're loud, but they're already up at 10,000 feet, so they're not really making a lot of noise. When they're over here low, the engines aren't screaming because they're not trying to gain altitude. They're just cruising, coming into land. So
it's never woken up.
I'd even be happy if they were just getting it, just pouring on the coals.
Yeah,
It's funny how different, in just one district, the noise level can be. If you go into Severna Park, right behind the Coles area, that community, they've recently experienced a change in the flight pattern. So I've been hearing from folks that are like, our ceilings are rattling.
Yeah. And a lot of that has to do with the FAA switched over to a new some GPS-based landing systems and the way they're routing traffic to make it more efficient for because the shorter time the aircraft is in the air, the less fuel it burns. So if you have it flying these crazy patterns to avoid things, you're in the air longer, you're burning more fuel. At a lower altitude, too, you're burning more fuel. So if you can kind of just line them up and have them just descend straight in, it kind of makes it's more efficient for the jets.
Well, don't they land into the wind?
Yeah, that's why when it's warm and the wind's out of the south, that's why they're taking off over us because the winds are out of the south. We're south of the airport.
I had no idea you were aviation experts too.
Oh, he is.
Oh.
I only know like 2 or 3 things.
Okay.
You've got all my knowledge out there already.
Don't get me started. It could be how much time do you have? If you want to know, we'll talk about it. But
I'm more of the train fanatic. I love trains.
Okay.
I love Amtrak. Like if I have to go up to New York City for anything, I'll take Amtrak all day. I love it.
If only we could get a train to Ocean City, right?
Hey, didn't there used to be one?
Once upon a time.
Yeah,
Yes.
there was a ferry at one time. You take the ferry from Sandy Point to Mattapeake.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
I did some nerded out on that a little bit, looking at the Bay Bridge.
Do you think that still will be a viable option?
People have actually pitched it, but a ferry, like even if it was a large ferry,
yeah.
How many cars is it carrying in the line for that?
Couldn't it be 100?
It could be more than that. I mean,
larger.
Even if you just took 100 cars off the road, wouldn't that just alleviate the traffic from the bridge? Like that's all you're trying to do. You're just trying to get traffic off the bridge a little bit.
I would choose to go that way. That's how I'd go.
The ferry. So look,
this takes 2 hours longer. Nope, we're taking a ferry.
so when we go up to Martha's Vineyard sometimes to go see my aunt who lives up there, and we take the ferry, and the ferry, man, it's great. Like you get on. We don't even take the car. We park the car and we take the ferry. It's a 25-minute ride, maybe 30.
Okay.
But it's very enjoyable. It costs $8 per person. A little snack bar. We get the kids a little snack. They eat like some pretzels or something, and they go out on the front of the bow, and they're loving the. It's an experience. It's a nice little way to get from one end to the other.
Right.
Kate May and Lewis do it.
I keep threatening to do that, But
the K. May Lewis one?
To go when we go up to New York, but it would add hours.
Hours.
Completely out of the way.
But you got on a ferry.
Yeah. Well, I'm such an airplane nerd. I once took this one flight that took me through Philadelphia and all this craziness so I could collect 2 types of aircraft I hadn't been on. So, it runs deep and bad over here.
Well, there is a BWI roundtable that has volunteers appointed. So if you're ever interested, just let me know.
There we go.
Look, the eyes lit up.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Twinkle
now.
Came back.
Christmas morning right here.
Yeah. Like push them in. Everyone will hate me. I'm like, lower.
Let's see. So what else have we talked about in the other podcast? We talked about the parks.
Yes.
And this is definitely not going to be in your alley, but as another resident with children that play sports, Mike and I were talking about how the baseball and softball fields in this area are just awful. Weeds, hard clay. I don't know if it's clay. I don't know what it is. We even went out to Severn for softball.
Okay.
And I can't remember the name of the park, but it's over by Quarterfield Road. It's like a 2-name park. Gansler, maybe. Is it Gansler Park? I don't remember. But anyway, the Severn Athletic Club, whatever uses it, they have their own softball teams, baseball teams. And it was beautiful. The softball fields had nice dugouts.
Okay.
Nice fencing.
Yep.
Grass looked like grass, not like weeds. Like when people come to where we play over at what is that, Belvedere Elementary School?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
so,
yes.
And it's all weeds.
Yep.
There's just grass growing in the middle of the infield. And we even had a dad who came out with a tractor he tilled 2 fields up
With his own tractor.
with his own his own dime. Got yelled at for it. Did it again anyway. For the kids.
Right.
And it's one of those things you ask for forgiveness, not for permission. And the fields were that much better, but even by the end of the season, they were just back to being awful again. And we had talked about whether it was these athletic associations' responsibility to handle these fields, and the county's like, look, it's a county league, but these individual groups are the ones that run the teams. And the county essentially does the scheduling, or maybe there's like a council of teams that does the scheduling for everybody.
Yep.
But essentially the county's like, we'll let you use the fields. You get first priority on the fields, but you have to maintain them. So maybe is it up to the individual associations, like Broadneck Baseball, Softball has got to do a better job of doing that. And maybe the Severn people just do a better job. Because up at Odenton, they've got Gork Park. Now, and the other thing I was wondering, they use parks, whereas we use a school. So where maybe the county schools are more responsible for these fields and maybe not the county. I don't really know what the dynamic is with that. I do know as the kids get older, they'll go over to Arnold Park, I think, where the fields are, from what I can tell, they're nicer over there.
Yeah, they have the softball field over there is really nice at Arnold Park.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then they have their 90-foot diamond, like the big field. That's nicer. Then they have another one. I think you can play either at 60 or 90 over there too. It's nicer. I don't know whether it's because it's older kids and more dedicated, and then the kids can actually help out. Because like when you're talking 9U baseball,
Right.
the kids aren't dragging the field, but at 14U, hey, drag the field.
Yeah.
Like they drag it between at the 5th inning, they'll drag it.
Right.
Whereas, like, I coached machine pitch, and I had to do it. Now, I'm an idiot. I don't know how to, I don't know anything about these tractors and stuff. Like, I'm trying to start this stupid thing, and I get it out. Like, I'm hitting thing. Like, it's bad.
There's 8 livers on that thing, by the way.
Oh, yeah. No, it's
on the trike?
Yeah.
There's, like, so many. I'm like, I don't know.
Like, what is this? Like, it's a bulldozer? Like, I don't know what this thing is. So I'm driving, and then the guy's like, no, don't use that. Use the other thing. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. But in any case, maybe that's the reason why, because you got morons like me doing it. But and the people that are the coaches and stuff, they all we had to stripe the fields and do all of it, which is fine.
Yep.
You know it when you sign up for it. It's not like they okie doke you. They tell you you're responsible for doing the field. And a lot of the dads come out and help, the moms come out and help. And we had fun with it, but it's definitely when you go to other parks, like
Yep.
if you go to like in Prince George's County, it's all Park and Planning Commission owns
Correct.
most of those things, and
They have
lot
a
of
very
money
large staff.
and a big budget.
Yes.
And I guess we don't have that here because it's I haven't seen Maryland Park Police out here before. So
even the parks we pay for, so like Kinder Farm, Downs, Quiet Waters, right? We went over to Downs not too long ago, and they had just put in a brand new playground.
Yep.
I'm going to be blunt here.
Okay.
It's an embarrassment for how small it is. For that big of a park.
I haven't seen it, so you'll have to.
So you got maybe 6 sets of swings.
Okay.
You have one tall structure that kids can climb in. And then there's like another one for little kids. And then you get a whole bunch of ground level toys or things to play on. You go over to Watkins Park in Prince George's County.
Yep.
It's massive. It's massive. It can hold a lot more kids. So like we went over to Downs because we want to check out the new playground.
Right.
And we were like, okay, this one should be good. It's one of the paid parks. Like, we pay for this. Not a lot, but for that Kinder Farm and Quiet Waters, we pay. People in this county have to pay to go. It's not a county benefit anymore. It was nowhere near what it should have been, in my opinion, at least. Now, that being said, I'm not sure, other than Kinder Farm Park, but Kinder Farm Park has a partnership with, I believe, 4-H for those animals, right?
Yes.
So that's a partnership.
And Friends of Kinder.
Yes. And you've also got the playground over there, which is a good size, but again, nothing compared to Watkins Park in PG County. But like Mike said, it's a different dynamic there as far as who's paying or what's being paid for. I get that.
Right.
But is that something, if we want to see better parks, now is it something where Anne Arundel County, it's more focused on water and beaches, because we do get that at Downs, we do get that in Sandy Point's a state park, but at Downs there is a nice water, there's a beach there where people can go.
Right.
I'm not saying it's not a nice park, but it's definitely more focused on walkways, water features, but not necessarily on parks and playgrounds for kids, right?
Yep.
And even like, so, and you talk about like the Broadneck Park, a lot of fields there. They've got that one small playground.
Yes.
It's like, come on. This is, granted, we're not paying for that park. It's a county-run park, but we have the little, and I remember when the pirate ship went in, everyone loved it, right? But then everyone found out that when everyone went to it, it really wasn't that big after all.
Right.
And so it got overcrowded, and then people just stopped going. Yeah. And I mean, it's one of those things where I wish, and I know these things cost a lot of money, so it's like, is it something maybe, can the county put more money toward that, the Parks and Rec, to like expand the playgrounds for kids, or is it just something where there really isn't that much interest in it? Anne Arundel County has different interests, and large playgrounds for kids just isn't one of them.
I think it's probably a combination of things. I mean, I wish I could have Park and Rec staff here, but I do know prior to, I want to say, right around the time that the economy crashed and governments had to get creative with how to save money.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, at that time, I think, and this was before my time, before I was even paying attention to what was happening in local government, there was this idea that rec and parks was just a luxury. So they were the last to get kind of their funding back up to snuff, and still it was lagging behind. But yeah, there has been more of a trail focus in Anne Arundel County and water access. But having young kids, I would agree that, if any of those named parks had a fluctuation of children in any given day, it does get quite crowded. Interestingly enough, we do have a recreation and parks town hall coming up where you can share your priorities. Sounds like it's right up your alley.
Maybe I will.
So you can do the recreation parks, and I need to get on that airport thing.
Right.
I really came here tonight to give you guys opportunities.
Yeah. You were here recruiting for positions that nobody else wants.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny talking about the baseball fields or the ball fields, because they can be used for a variety of sports. A few years ago, the Broadneck Baseball organization was under different leadership. And I actually just came to learn all of this in probably the last year when new leadership took over. So apparently the previous leadership for that club had said no thank you to the county for maintaining the grass and the diamonds. So it was the new leadership that came on that reached out to the county and said, our volunteers can't possibly do all this. So it was the area ball fields were getting worked back into the system at the encouragement of the new leadership, and then COVID hit. So everything countywide, as you know, our county was shut down for an extensive period of time. We're still trying to get employees out to the long list of places they need to go.
Well, would they even go to the schools though, or is that a schools thing or is that a parks thing?
The Belvedere fields are maintained by Rec and Parks.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah, so I guess wherever the line is, they just
ignore it and don't go look at it at all.
I've heard so many complaints on that field. There's one diamond that holds water after storms and doesn't drain.
Oh yeah,
that was on the baseball field, right?
Yeah, where my oldest played. No, he hits left, so he was good. But if you're a right-handed hitter, which most kids are,
right?
You're standing in a hole, and if you get good rain on Wednesday, chances are you're not playing Saturday because it just now one of the dads went out there and took that 3-wheeled contraption and really went after it.
So he knew how to work the levers.
Yeah, he did a pretty good job, and he was out with a shovel, moving dirt around, and I'm just sitting there what are you doing? He's like, oh, I said, I don't know enough about this to help you, but I encourage you, dude, keep it up.
I'm going to cheer.
I'm surprised that's the field that holds water, though, because it's not the lowest field.
Yeah, now, over at Arnold, the field that really gets it bad is the T-ball field. The outfield's like a swamp.
I call that one Minute Maid Park.
Yeah.
Because the outfield, if the Minute Maid Park in Houston, the Major League Baseball park for the Astros.
Yep.
In center field, there's the warning track, and then there's the incline. You know what I'm talking?
Yeah.
So it's so if a center fielder is going and he runs past the warning track, there's no wall yet. You have to run up a hill to go make the catch before you get to the wall. We have one over at Arnold Park where I think except it goes down and then back up,
yeah.
And then there's the fence.
Oh.
Which is the outfield fence because the T-ball they don't need a fence, but it's the outfield fence for the adjacent field is what you.
Okay.
Oh, is that what that? Okay,
yeah.
I just thought it was. I'm like, who did this? Why would you make this in the outfield of a T-ball field? But I guess you're right. No one playing T-ball is hitting the ball that far anyway. But I'm like, wow, it reminds me of Minute Maid Park.
Right here in Arnold, Maryland.
Yeah,
we're training them to go play for the Astros.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But we spoke about this a little bit of a departure from the parks is we spoke about this right before we started. The trash day.
Trash.
Is there any chance of going back to 2 days a week trash?
There's always a chance.
How much of a stink do
That's
I have
a no.
to make?
That's a no, by the way. That's what we heard. No.
Right.
There's no chance.
So, because, and, we talked about, I like to eat crabs in the summer.
Yes.
And our trash day here is Friday. If I eat crabs on Saturday, those crabs are sitting out there for a minute before.
In the heat.
Yeah. And, it's one of those things. And I remember when we first moved here, we had it twice a week. Mm-hmm. And then I guess under all that austerity stuff that was going around, probably when the parks got hit and everyone got hit with furloughs and all. And it was but now property values are back up. What happened to those services? It's almost like once it goes away, it never comes back.
Yeah. Property taxes are going back up. Maybe we can use a little bit of that for the second trash day.
Or another trash day.
Yeah. I would actually pay $20 more a month or $50 or whatever to have second trash day.
No.
I would. No. That's my own personal opinion.
I agree with you, but don't tell them that. Look, I don't want the property tax going back up again.
So it's interesting that you're asking this question now because right now people are having a hard time getting even their one-day trash picked up. That's a common complaint, and interestingly enough, the major company that we contract with, that the county contracts with, actually lost a court case for some illegal dumping, and so
Great.
They were fined quite a hefty number. So I would imagine that there's probably some issues with getting trucks out, but the administration is working on changing carriers or providers. But yeah, I mean, land or yard waste, I should say, has been sitting out there for weeks in some folks' home.
Because I found the county's been really responsive when a couple times where I've had issues, something didn't get picked up.
Right.
And I call them, and they some dude drives out with a pickup truck and takes care of it. One time,
Yes.
a truck, a big bag of trash dumped there. It was all over the road, and this dude comes out with a shovel, and he was the guy I spoke to on the phone. The supervisor came out, so they're they're very responsive when that sort of thing happens, which is great. It's just I miss second trash day.
I bet the waste management staff misses it too.
So, speaking of that Arundel 311 app, and I think it goes to C-Click Fix or whatever,
Yes.
the website. I've used that like twice. They're very responsive. The county is very responsive to that. So if you do have any issues as far as, I reported my sidewalk. You reported trash. I mean, people report things, all various types of things, and they are very responsive to that app.
Yep. Potholes.
Yeah, you don't have to wait on hold. Nobody's telling you, let me get back to you on that. Nope. You send off the request in that Arundel 311 app, and they're very responsive to that. So I'm going to give the county a ton of credit on that. When you put in a request, they're on top of it.
Yeah.
Now my sidewalk's not fixed yet though. It's been like 45 days. Like, hey man, but they've got to they contract out the sidewalk work when it's this extensive.
Yep.
Because they've got to cut up some tree roots and stuff like that, and apparently that's backlogged for a while. So they just did it with Bay Hills. So apparently we're close to next on the list. So
now, have any county contractors had problems hiring people? I know a lot of businesses right now are screaming for people, especially in the service industry.
Right.
And I don't know if the trash removal people might be in the same boat where they're having trouble getting people because they're getting paid to stay home, replacing workers. So is that something that you've heard of or seen or?
I haven't heard as much of that in the beginning. It was, there would be sanitary waste, like a staff, they work in crews. One was, had gotten sick and tested positive. So then the whole crew was out because they had to quarantine. So it was more of that. I will say that county staff is just now getting back into buildings. That was a recent improvement, which I think is going to get everything back on track because it's been like slugs moving.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people working from home kind of treated it like vacation time, trying to get things done. And I know at my job, trying to get things done was because we had people that were in and out and trying to get the people that were out to get things done. Like, oh, we're not doing that. We're not in the office. Well, this needs to get done regardless of what's going on. So, and I guess when you talk about county employees, they're not going to leave their job. It's harder to get hired by a government entity than it is in the private sector. So once you get in, you're not going to just not come back.
Right. And then you have, we're still, at least as far as I've seen in different offices, working a lot on paper. Mm-hmm. So with the buildings being closed and limiting people, you would have people rotating in. Inspections and permits would only have one or two people in an office of 20 that could actually go in and touch the files, and then you're kind of left to your own devices at your home for whatever you have on your computer. If you had a computer, that wasn't, some employees I don't even think had computers that could connect to this. I mean, it was just when you're forced to go into the technology world, you do it. But I don't think that had it not been for COVID, I don't think we would have technology where it is today in the county.
Yeah. No, I think some people were definitely like, if they weren't computer savvy, they either got or just fell off, like they just sunk.
Yes.
So I'll be honest with you. So we about 7-8 years ago, we kind of made that huge transition, and it was because that we knew our lease was going to be up and our landlord wasn't going to renew it. And we were going to have to move into another building. Mm-hmm. But the new building only had capacity for about 75 to 80% of the workforce. But that didn't mean we had 75 or 80% of the work. So they said, look, we can't let any of you go. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to modernize all of our equipment for your personal use. Instead of desktops, you're getting laptops, and you're going to get a personal phone. Right. That you can use as a mobile hotspot so that you will always have internet no matter where you go. even home. So being home didn't mean that you couldn't work.
Right.
All right. And then what they did was, so they had about 3 years to implement this. They got the laptops and the phones almost right away. Then they updated the systems that we used.
Okay.
So then everything, all the systems of record were online systems. Paper was no longer a system of the system of record anymore. So then, excuse me, and then they started phasing it in. So it's like, okay, if you can telework, if you're in a job that can telework, 1 day a week you're going to telework. Or I'm sorry, 1 day every 2 weeks you're going to telework to get used to it. And you're going to let us know what the problems are. Okay, good enough. 6 months goes by. Now it's once a week.
Okay.
Another 6 months go by. 2 days per week. Another 6 months to a year go by. 3 days a week. Then we move.
Right.
If you can telework full time, you are now teleworking full time. And if you need to come in, you have no assigned seat. You just find a place and plug your Ethernet cable into your laptop.
Right.
That's it. There are no more assigned seatings, no more offices, no more nothing. The only people that got offices were senior leadership. That was it. And so you'd walk in, you'd open the door to the office.
Right.
You can see clear across. It's windows to the right of you, windows all the way down the hall, all the way down to the left of you, and windows all in front of you.
Okay.
And it was high boy tables and like maybe 6 or 7 cubicles for ADA compliance. So certain people could have their specific cubicle to accommodate their needs.
Right.
Everyone else was at a high boy table. That's it. And that was it. I mean, it was essentially a 5-year rip the Band-Aid moment and we've actually hired more people since then. They've reduced our space even more. And so more and more people, okay, if you can telework, you're going to telework.
Yep.
And you've got to be okay with this. So we had some older people that they had to get used to it or they had to go find another job. And it wasn't like a push you out the door kind of thing. They relied a lot on the younger workforce that we had to help train the older workforce.
Okay.
So it was like you have the patience, help your coworker out. And it was one of those things where like it was like a veiled thing where like, or you're gonna have to do their work for them. Right. You know? All right, I'll teach Larry how to do this. Don't give me more work. But eventually in the end it worked out.
Right.
But I think once COVID kind of hit, I think it started letting people realize that it's not the workforce that's the issue with telework anymore. Now, don't get me wrong. The theory is if someone is a bad worker in the office, they'll be a bad worker at home.
Right.
If someone's a bad worker at home, they would have been a bad worker in the office. But that's always everyone's like reservation. Like as a manager, as a leader, you're like, I can't see my workforce working, so I'm afraid to let them work from home.
Right.
It's never the case though. If you have good employees, they will work good from home or wherever. And I think that kind of got forced upon a lot of people that were hesitant about implementing it.
Right.
But that doesn't mean the systems in the workforce were ready for it. Like the online systems, like all of our systems are web-based portals. So I can go to a URL, I can log into the system, and I'm in.
Okay.
And we're tunneled in with a VPN. Everything's secure and connected. So I mean, they took the appropriate measures to make it a viable option.
Yep.
But I think COVID kind of forced that on a lot of employers that weren't ready for it.
Oh,
but I think after a year of it, they're like, okay, we can do this. We're good.
And I think that's the case across the private sector in so many different industries. And you know how fast the government sector works when compared to the private sector.
Right. So moving at the speed of government.
We might see that in 5 to 10 years.
It's coming though. It's coming. But a lot of it's the reluctance to put money into it. Because especially if you have citizens that are looking at the budget line item by line item, well, what do you mean you need a new computer system? What's wrong with the old one? No, it's modernization. It's to make things more efficient. Yeah. And go ahead with the times. I mean, you can't be using your paper system from 25 years ago in an environment like today. Yep. It just doesn't work.
It's funny you say that. So the chambers, that's where the council meets, and we have our legislative discussions in a non-COVID time. We're going to get back there, but it's actually under construction right now. And this was a long-term plan, but they weren't able to easily do the construction because we were always meeting. So COVID takes place, and now they can take all the revenue and the funding that they had put aside. So we would go into meetings with binders, huge binders with tons of tabs. Every bill had a tab, and you're flipping through this, and then you have a pile of amendments all on paper, color coded. I mean, and you don't have, there's 7 of us sitting up there, and we have our legislative counsel and our auditor. I didn't have enough space to get all of the paper in front of me at the appropriate time. So it was kind of a hodgepodge mess. But now we're going to have an actual screen, a monitor. We're going to be able to type. There's going to be a monitor in chambers so that people can see displays of what we're looking at. So we're getting there. I think it's going to take a longer time for the rest of county and state government to get there. But this certainly set the pace or the standard.
Yeah. Well, the schools had to get there fast.
They had to get there fast. Never did I think I'd see kindergartners walking around with laptops.
Oh, no.
Right. I had one in my house.
Yeah.
Yeah. and to watch the things that my kindergartner can do on that thing, and I'm like he's better at it than his mother is.
Yep.
I'm like, look at and my oldest, he's buzzing around, and I'm like, you guys are good. Not as good as Dad, but you're good.
Right.
But no, the stuff that they're doing with it, it's really cool, the fact that they've gotten to it. And I'm like, well, maybe this ends snow days. Give them all laptops. The snow day go virtual.
Snow days should never end, man.
No,
snow days are
Don't take
awesome
away
for
the
the
snow
kids.
days.
Yeah.
I love, and we had some decent ones.
We did.
This winter, but it's one of the things with it'll be neat to see what the schools do next, and as you are a former PTA president, it'll be neat to see what they do next year with school, and the county council has very little to do with that. Correct? That's the school board.
Well, to some degree. I mean, it's in the budget.
Okay.
But what was unique about this year, I think it was always the plan. If you watch the Board of Education meetings, it was always the plan at some point in the future for a certain group of children, probably high school, maybe some middle school, to have Chromebooks. But then when they all needed them, it was K through 12, and it was all funded with CARES money.
Okay.
So prior to that, being on the PTO, we would have elaborate fundraisers to raise enough money to get a Chromebook cart of 30 for one grade level to share, and they would roll the cart from class to class.
Yeah.
That was just 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild to think that now that they all have them. And
Yes.
then, I had to call, before they went back hybrid. Well, now they're back for the full 4 days, and, having to call the help desk to troubleshoot my oldest computer problem. Like, and then I'd have to go and call the help desk to troubleshoot mine because there's something wrong with mine. Like, what are we doing here? Like, this is just bizarro world.
It was funny you mentioned the CARES Act, because I felt like that was. I'm not a big fan of the federal government getting involved with local education, but I thought that was one instance. It was forced. Don't get me wrong; they had to do something, or someone had to do something, and I think it was a very hands-off approach to say, here's the money, get all your kids Chromebooks for this purpose.
Right.
But I think the Chromebooks at the end of the day are a very useful tool that these kids will end up using quite a bit. And so I think the federal government actually did something good there, where they still stayed a little bit hands-off.
Right.
But they said, here's the money, do this with it, and then use them how you want. Use the software you want, implement it how you want, but you have the technology to do it now. And I thought that was really good of them. I thought that was a nice way for them to get involved without being in the weeds of it all.
Right.
And I felt like that was more of a role of a federal government than some other things.
Yep.
That I just felt like this was a good way for them to do, to help without injecting themselves.
Right. Micromanaging.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Again, though, more out of need than anything. So I'm trying to think. Do we have any other things, or we can always ask you about the budget?
That is a fine thing to talk about too. It was just passed this week.
So of course, I try and stay off Facebook, but I do read some comments, and everyone's hemming and hawing about a party line vote. They're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it's party line vote." It was 4-3, Democrats versus Republicans. It passed.
It did.
Of course. But of course the talking points, though, were, I can't believe these people are against teachers. because this budget, it did fully fund teachers back to full steps for ones that had to skip steps during the 2008-2009 economic collapse.
Correct.
Right. Everyone had to take a haircut. Teachers and school workers took a haircut on that. Lost some steps a couple times. And the past couple of years, they've been doing makeup steps, and the county, the budgets have been passed for that. And these people online are equating the no votes to they don't support teachers.
Yep.
But they didn't look at the entire budget and see how bloated it was. And even if you were for, and the teacher and the school budget is half of the county budget, correct?
Correct, about half, yep.
But if you don't like the other half, or think a portion of the other half is too exorbitant, I believe I read an op-ed from Nick Kipke that said that the general standard was to use the Affordability Commission's increase of wages in the county, and they said it was 2%, but that took into consideration the additional COVID money for unemployment, I believe. So he said the real increase was probably closer to like 1 to 1.5%, but this year's budget increased over last year's by like 9.5%. So it was like adding an additional 7% to the county budget. And that Affordability Commission has been used for years as the benchmark as to how much the county budget should increase.
Right.
And so he was saying, look, if the increase was only 2% and included all the increases or get the teachers back to where they should, the three of you probably would have voted for it.
Yep.
But because it outstripped that bipartisan commission's standard, that was why the reason for the no vote, and that's something I can understand.
Yep. So it's a 45-day process that the council goes through, and before I even ran for this office, I had a nonprofit that was focused on parents coming out and testifying in support of paying our teachers so that we could keep them and retain them here. So keeping that in mind going into this budget, when an opportunity presented itself to move just $110,000 from one pot of money in the school board's budget to salaries and wages, I introduced that amendment, and it passed with bipartisan support. The way that the school system budget works, it's 13 state categories. So moved it from instructional materials to salaries and wages. But where the majority of the amendments that I introduced, either by myself or with my colleagues, was cutting what we thought was not necessary right now, because we're still getting federal money, federal stimulus money, and we will for the next 3.5 years or 2.5 years once this budget is said and done. It concerns me to continue to load and spend and grow when we still don't know what the economic outlook is going to be when all of the federal assistance goes away. And we are getting red flags waved at us by economists, by people who study this. So I wanted it to be a little more conservative. It came down to $8 million in revenue that this budget is getting by increasing over the constant yield. That's your property tax rate assessment. The constant yield is the level that you are charged to keep revenue in the county the same. This budget goes above that for homeowners on their tax payments to raise an additional $8 million in revenue. So that tells me we have in this budget, we're spending $8 million that we need more money from you to spend. So that raises a red flag. And then last year's budget created a $25 million deficit. In this budget, we've only lowered that by $5 million. So it's the spending rate with the deficit. So all of these things come into play when I make a decision. I'm thrilled that the amendment passed for the teacher salaries and wages, but I can't just make a vote based on one part of. I have to take it in totality.
So let me ask you, so on the other side of things, they said there was actually a surplus from last year's budget because of the federal money. Was that the case or no?
So there was a surplus there was unexpected revenue, $114 million, and that was from the salary freeze.
Okay.
We did not hire anybody. We kept the positions there, so the money was there, but we didn't hire anyone. they have said that that money is going to be used or is being used on one-time investments.
Let me ask you.
Yes.
So, well, let me ask you this, because we were all here when 2008 and 2009 happened.
Yep.
We know the economy comes and goes in cycles.
Correct.
We are in the breadth of a upswing.
Yep.
Or maybe we're close to the top of that upswing. If there was that big of a surplus in one year, why not be thankful for the gift and sock it away? Mm-hmm. So that way next time there is a 2008 or 2009, we don't have to cut down to one trash day.
Or zero trash days.
Or zero trash, yeah.
Right.
It's one of those things like, it's not necessarily a bad thing to take a surplus and kind of sock it away. Let the county invest it in like a 2% bond or mutual fund, whatever the county does with their excess funds, put it away in the rainy day fund like the state did.
Right.
And when the economic downturn happens, and it always will, I mean, it's been happening for 80-something years, or more than that, where there are cycles. There's upswings and downswings. And when there's a downswing, what always happens is because everyone took the money and spent surpluses, I believe it happened when Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich, I believe they came to a compromise budget. There was a surplus, and I think they spent it.
Yep.
And when the economy kind of went down in the 90s, when the tech bubble collapsed, they had to finance more money, so they have it for the budget. Well, we're a county. Could we put out some bonds? Sure, but if we have a $114 million windfall, rather than spend it in this next fiscal year budget, why not put it aside? Especially if you can still increase the budget 2% according to that affordability commission.
Right.
You still have more money. You can still get your teachers caught up. You can still get all your school people caught up. But maybe we're not putting money into some of that extra fluff or extra things that maybe are a little more partisan than other things. And sock that $114 million away.
Yep.
Because right now we all see our home values skyrocketing right now. Mm-hmm. But that's not going to last forever.
No, and
when
who
they
knows
come
if
back
that's
down,
a bubble too, if that's getting ready to pop.
And when it comes back down and they reassess your home value for what it's worth on the downside, and the county gets less tax revenue, and we got $114 million in the bank.
Right. And it just boils down to completely different philosophies on how to approach budgets. If it had not been for the CARES stimulus bill passing and the bill that followed, we would have been so underwater in this county. We would have had to empty our rainy day account and the contingency fund. And when you go through that, you have nothing left. So, I mean, the federal government's not always going to, or I hope is always going to come and bail us out.
Well, right, yeah. I'm not one of those people that says the government shouldn't be doing things. I'm not one of those. I'm not that far right where I think that. I think the government has its purpose.
Right.
They're there to help the people that need it, especially. But if you have enough money to take care of your people, and you have an excess to put it away for when the eventual downturn happens, and I'm not saying it's going to be a collapse. Like 2008, 2009 was a really rare occurrence. Right. It was on the level of the Great Depression. I'm not saying it's going to be on that level, but putting some money aside for that instance where you can accept less tax revenue for when that happens, but you won't have to cut anything because you've got the money set aside from the good times.
Right.
It allows you to have more of that steady budget versus when the downtimes come. All right, garbage. Your second garbage day is gone, and you're not eating crabs on a Saturday anymore.
You're not eating crabs, yeah.
Right? You're not getting those crabs anymore. And look, in this part of the county, crabs are a big deal. I like my crabs. I like eating them. So, it's just one of those things where I wish the budget pass would have been a little bit more. I don't want to even say on the conservative side, but I wish they would have socked some of that money away for the future. But we appreciate you coming by. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you for having me.
It was fun. Hopefully we didn't come down too much like I don't even know what the newscasters of the day are right now. But hopefully we didn't come down too hard on you.
And I think that this is a time to thank you for what you're for serving, and it's also, it goes to show how I think oftentimes people don't really consider how important local government is. They get wrapped up in presidential politics and
Absolutely.
maybe a midterm election, and they kind of ignore the local stuff when really the stuff that impacts your life the most is the local stuff. They can do whatever they want in the district, in the White House, and in Congress, but does that affect your second trash day?
It doesn't.
Right. Exactly.
And
and people think of it as minor stuff, but it's not. And this is stuff that you have to live with every day. And the fact that you went out there and ran and were elected, and for those out there, make sure you stay in tune and connected with your local affairs, because it is what affects your life daily.
And we've talked about this with the people online, on Facebook. I'm not on Twitter. Twitter's a garbage show. Even next door, but especially on Facebook, I really wish people would tone down their vitriol. I feel like I've told Mike for anyone who hasn't seen The Social Dilemma.
Oh, yes.
It's a very interesting documentary or movie, I don't know what you want to call it, on how social media can affect people, and what the social media companies are doing to push you one way or another without you even knowing it. So before you make that comment, before you hit that send button, read what you wrote and delete it.
Right.
Just delete it. The other person who you're trying to get at is really they're not going to change their opinion because you came at them hard. You were the keyboard warrior for the day. No one is changing their opinion for you.
What is it? Owning the libs,
yeah, right,
or whatever they say.
Right. No one. Not to say that no one cares what you think online.
Right.
But people read your comment. They might get a chuckle out of it. They get their confirmation bias on either side, but it does nothing. And it just makes you look like a horrible person. But with that said, again, thank you to Amanda for coming.
You're very welcome.
We hope you'll come back next time. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, rate us on all the podcast platforms, and we will see you next time.